There are numerous money mistakes almost many of us make all the time. Be it not having a budget, not having a financial plan, not saving early in life, excessive spending, spending too much on house, not having an emergency fund, missing on employer matching contributions, not being prompt on payments, buying too much gold, being too conservative in your investments, being underinsured, and the list goes on and on. But today we are not discussing about such mistakes, but rather the top 3 money mistakes even smart people make from a standpoint of behavioral analysis. This discussion is in fact kind of like a quick review of the book Misbehaving: The Making of Behavioral Economics, written by the Nobel Prize winner Mr. Richard Thaler. He tells us how irrational we are in making decisions. Let's start with the first and very common mistake, the endowment effect. This is very interesting. Say, for example, you give a nice mug to a group of people. Few hours later, they are asked to sell the mug. Most of them quoted a price of $7. Then they were asked to decide on a price that they would like to buy the mug. Surprisingly, most people quoted a price of $3. This means each of the people in this group, as a seller, he or she valued his mug at $7, whereas on the other hand, as a buyer valued the same mug at almost half the price, that is $3. Though this sounds surprising, this is a very common phenomenon. Endowment effect is what happens when you give more value to any object you own, often unrealistically and irrationally, just because you own it, in comparison with how we value it if we want to buy that same object. This happens very much in real life. We overprice our old stuff to the point that we don't sell it at all. The essence of this basically is that we value things differently as buyers and sellers. Well, in fact, that's how the schemes like 30-day money back guarantee work. Say, for example, you visit a furniture store to buy a sofa. You choose a sofa that's on a 30-day money back guarantee plan, thinking that you can return it if you don't like the sofa when you're using it. A week passed and you discover some design flaws with the sofa and you find it a bit uncomfortable. But in most of the cases, you wouldn't like to return the sofa because you feel it is yours. And there is a psychological barrier, a sense of ownership that doesn't allow you to return it. The endowment effect happens in investment life too. Very often, we overvalue our portfolio. You set way higher and unrealistic selling prices for your stocks. Once the target is hit, you set even higher target price. This is mere ownership effect and perceived aversion to making losses. The best way to get out of such a bias is to realize that it exists. Once you realize that there is a psychological effect that takes you towards wrong decisions, you need to find ways to outsmart it. Say, for example, you bought a few shares of a company in an IPO. After 2 years, you see that the company's performance has declined and you don't see any potential in it. You need to do a thorough research on the company, compare the stock price and the intrinsic value of the stock, and see if it makes sense for you to sell off this non-performing stock. Of course, if the stock has the potential and you have any logic other than emotional, because of which you believe the company will perform well, you should keep it. Otherwise, if you're just keeping the stock in your portfolio just because of your emotional attachment to it, just think again. You need to reconstruct your analysis of holding the stock and thinking about the opportunity cost, that is, the benefit derived from the next best opportunity of investment after selling this non performing stock. The second most important and common mistake is the sunk cost fallacy. This mistake is all about how you remain committed to a resource just because you previously invested in it. Say, for example, you order food at a restaurant. After eating some, you don't feel like eating anymore. But just because you paid for it, you force yourself or your family members to eat it with the false presumption of getting your money's worth. You don't really consider the disadvantages of overeating because it is not tangible or cannot be monetized. The inconvenience caused from overeating is usually held in a different mental account than the one associated with the cost of buying food. Let's take one more example. You buy a 100 rupee ticket to a movie, but suddenly it started raining heavily. What do? Will you drive in the bad weather condition to watch the movie because you made the initial investment of 100 rupees? Or will you consider not going to the movie to avoid the inconvenience of driving in the heavy rain? If you chose the second option because you valued the inconveniences of driving in such unfavorable circumstances, then you have outsmarted the sunk cost fallacy. If you chose the first option of driving through the rain to watch a movie just because you bought the ticket, then you need to think twice because it is not worth pushing yourself to do things that you are not happy with just because you have invested your time, energy, and money into a decision. Let's just think why we do such a mistake in the first place. Believe it or not, it is definitely our attempt to convince ourselves or others that our investment decision did not go waste. That's why we do it. It's quite irrational because you should realize that your money is gone once you have made a bad decision or the situations weren't favorable. And there should not be any reason to honor your decision and stick with it in order to convince yourself with a perceived notion of recapturing the loss. This mistake of sunk cost fallacy is also quite prevalent in the investing world. Say you purchased a stock at an all-time high which performed very badly because of very bad business model and worse management. The stock price has come down a lot and the company's performance is falling. You don't see any potential in it. Still, you buy more shares of it and pump more money into it at these low prices with the idea of averaging it down. This is a clear example of sunk cost fallacy. That's because you are holding on to this non-performing company instead of selling it because maybe you don't want to prove your decision of buying this stock wrong. You are averse to the loss you will incur in case you sell these stocks. So the lesson here is investment is an investment. It is there to help you make money, not give you love. Ask yourself why you invested in the first place. If the fundamentals of the company have changed, and re-evaluate your investment. It's okay to make wrong decisions and there should absolutely be no guilt in it. Money gone is gone and cannot be recovered. The third most common mistake is falling prey to the theory of the transaction utility. In fact, there is something called as the acquisition utility. Acquisition utility is the value consumers derive from obtaining a good minus the price paid. That is the basic pleasure you obtain from purchasing a good. It is the consumer's perceived economic gain from the purchase of the product. It depends on the utility of the item you purchased and how much you paid for it. For example, you paid 10,000 rupees to buy a vacuum cleaner. You have an idea in mind that this cleaner will help you with the cleaning work worth probably 30,000 rupees. So, the conceived economic gain you obtained from buying it is 20,000 rupees. In other words, it's just the perceived value you derive from purchasing the good. In contrast, there is something called as transaction utility that you should always be careful about. Transaction utility is the pleasure that the consumer obtains from the whole experience of his purchase more than the actual value that the product is giving to him. This is actually the difference between the actual price you pay for a product minus the imaginatory or reference price. Consumer has a price in mind for getting this product. This imaginatory price is what we call the reference price. The consumer actually does a mental accounting. Let's take two scenarios. The first scenario is this. Suppose you're going to buy a set of headphones which costs 200 rupees. Just 20 minutes away, you can buy the same kind of item for 180 rupees. That is 20 rupees lesser. The second scenario is this. Suppose you're going to buy a TV set which costs 20,000 rupees. Just 20 minutes away, you can buy the same kind of TV for 19,980 rupees. That is 20 rupees lesser. Now, would you travel 20 minutes and buy the headphones or the TV? Most people would say they would prefer to travel 20 minutes and buy the headphones and not the TV. Why? Because the discount on the headphones is 10% compared to a meager 0.1% discount on the TV. Essentially, you are enjoying the feeling of making a smart decision and avoiding being ripped off. But are you really making a smart decision? Think again. After all, why do we need to differentiate between the 20 rupees in the first scenario and the second scenario? Say for example, a water bottle costs 20 rupees in your nearby store. The same kind of bottle costs 50 rupees in an expensive hotel that you are dining in. You probably are okay with buying this 50 rupee bottle at the hotel because you think it's worth it. There are many other great examples in this book, like how we value free gift money differently, and many more. Make sure you check out this awesome book called Misbehaving. Which one of these mistakes you think you or your family members commit very often? Let me know in the comment section.